Welcome back to the discussion Identity Access Management, sponsored by SailPoint on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guest today is Darren Rolls, Chief Technology and Chief Information Security Officer at SailPoint. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy. You know, everyone in the studio seems to have federal customers. Some can talk about their customers, some can't. So I'm going to ask you an awkward question here, Darren. I know you can't name specific customers, but can you give me maybe a before and after snapshot of how your organization, SailPoint, has helped a federal agency in their security posture and have them give a more comprehensive approach to governance? Just a maybe.
Sure, yeah, you're quite right. I can't mention who, but I can give you a very specific set of use case, and one that I think we're now seeing a repeat, actually, interestingly, across a number of agencies. This particular agency was no stranger to identity and access management and administration. Had a strong focus on PIV, on smart card, on authentication. They were also trying to work with identity provisioning, so making sure that when somebody joins an organization, they're given the right access. These guys had unfortunately spent nearly 5 years and over $10 million deploying a commercial product which had really very minimal reach. And, you know, they were still taking 4 to 5 weeks to get access, when people joined, to get the right access to the right systems. They were very much doing rubber stamp audit on who had access to what, no self-service, really a pretty immature environment. After the first phase of our deployment, which was in basically less than 6 months, these guys were able to expand to over 60 new systems, so they were no longer controlling and administering and auditing just a few. They had 60 new systems in place. They had managed to extend the scope of their PIV card initiative a little further into the organization. They were moving into fast joiner mover levers. People were actually getting access the day they joined, which is obviously a considerable enhancement. And they were able to better prove compliance and audit around who had access to what. So all around a good story for us.
Well, the administrators like the compliance part, but the leaders like the analytics. And I think that's the phrase that pays is the analytics that all that information gives you.
Exactly, yeah. I come back to that same principle. You can't manage what you can't see.
Yeah.
And what analytics gives you is the ability, once we've collected, this principle of identity governance, being able to see everything, bring it all together, manage it, gives you a viewpoint from which you can do the type of analytics. Show me everybody that has access to something that comes from this region that is doing a certain set of actions. That's the type of analytics that gives you visibility and control, for sure.
I have a friend who is a hospital CIO, and he likes to do gap analysis of different programs. You're missing this, you're missing that, and then they have to fix it or else.
Right.
So if I were to put you in an agency in town here, what are some of the things you commonly see when it comes to gap analysis to addressing identity security?
Well, I think historically, privileged user management has been very weak in many agencies, and certainly identity governance and administration is a new principle for most agencies. This idea of, as we've said, creating a business user interface to all of our security systems is something that hasn't been in place. The other thing I quite often have seen is a sort of foregoing the doable for the ideal. A lot of what we're talking about here are basic fundamental security administration capabilities. And if somebody sets, a goal, which is, for some, we set analytics. Now I'm going to do crazy real-time behavioral analytics, and I'm going to do it. If you haven't done basic administration, you're not managing the right accounts to the right people, you got nothing, right?
Don't even start the analytics if you don't have good data.
Exactly. So it's kind of a base principle. So, I have seen and I'm glad to say I'm seeing a reset and a rethink in that. People realizing that these basic principles have to be in place, and identity governance can deliver it. And so, that focus gives a strong foundation to do these higher order security analytics things.
Well, I'm glad you used the word reset, because here it is, 2017. We got a reset in Washington, D.C., new sheriff in town and everything. So what advice would you give the incoming administration with regards to cybersecurity?
Well, I think there's one very, very simple one, and it's something we touched on earlier around joiner, mover, lever. With the change in administration, there's about 4,000, right? 4,000 people are leaving, and 4,000 new people are coming.
So what you would say is 4,000 abandoned email addresses possibly that can be stolen.
4,000 accounts that either have to be removed or reused. 4,000 sets of privileges that have to be reset, re-understood. Do the same people come into the same roles with the same capabilities as they had before? It's a colossal identity management problem. And let's face it, don't be opening a vulnerability in that office, right? Because obviously it's going to be a point of attack. So I think that JML cycle would be something I would be very, very focused on if I were in the administration, for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about the bigger picture, but from the smaller picture of just individuals moving into an office, and just because they're in that same position doesn't mean they should have the same roles and rights as the person before them. Maybe they should be expanded. Maybe they should be expanded for a short period of time or later on, and that comes to the governance itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you're going to be authenticating a new person potentially to the same sets of capabilities and functions. I mean, that is likely at a point of change as well. If nothing else, you have to just think about it from a logging perspective. We have to reset that, right? Because it's no longer Darren doing these things. It's now John or Jim or whoever, you know, Jane, whoever it is that's carrying out. So it's almost a complete reset to the security infrastructure that has to happen when you do these massive change. And where change happens, vulnerability is usually introduced. And so it's certainly a point that needs some focus.
Well, American football, we have a 2-minute drill. I'm giving you a 1-minute drill. So where do you see the whole topic of identity governance going the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think it's maturing through a place of acceptance now. I think everybody is realizing that this is something that everybody has to do. You know, it's something that we at SailPoint, right? We have 700 employees. We have to do identity governance for our own employees. So I think we'll continue to see that acceptance that it's a base accepted principle. And I think what we're seeing is it becoming more and more the center of our security architecture and our security infrastructure, providing context and controls for who has access to what. And so I think that really will continue.
Great. I'd like to thank today's guest, Darren Rolls, Chief Technology and Chief Information Security Officer from SailPoint. I'm John Gilroy on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and search Identity Management.